Stephanie Ramos reporting. The swearing-in ceremony for Judge Neil Gorsuch will take place next Monday in Washington.
And the Supreme Court has gone over a year without having that critical 9th seat filled. Let's bring in lawyer Elliot Felig of Elliot Felig and Associates to really get into this issue. Elliot, you confirmed it. You predicted it. You said that he would indeed be confirmed. Yes. And you did say when you were on the show last that the nuclear option would be invoked. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I appreciate the recognition. I don't think it was the boldest of predictions. I think Mitch McConnell had been telling us for about 2 months that I'm getting him confirmed.
Take the credit, Elliot.
Thank you.
Take the credit.
Thank you. But look, Chuck Schumer, in opposing this, said, well, why don't we get a new nominee who can get 60 votes so we don't have to go nuclear? The fact is, it's a lovely thought from Senator Schumer, but in the current climate, given how divided the Senate is along partisan lines and ideological lines, I don't think a nominee exists on planet Earth who would be conservative enough for President Trump and for the Republican senators and for the Republican base and could still win crossover support from Democrats. And vice versa, and we saw this with Merrick Garland, I don't think a candidate exists who would be liberal enough for President Obama and the Democratic base and could win Republican crossover votes. There just aren't enough moderates left in the Senate. It is so divided that broad bipartisan consensus doesn't happen anymore.
But Elliot, they talked for a while, both senators on the Republican and Democratic side. They talked during the Garland nomination.
Right.
Where do they go from here? The filibuster is gone for judicial nominees. It's there by, is it there just by a thread for legislation?
It appears that way. Senator McCain, Senator Collins, the few senators who you maybe could still describe as moderates say they're going to try to forge a bipartisan consensus to maintain the filibuster for legislation. But look, it certainly opens the door for even more partisan division, even more extreme nominees. If you're Donald Trump, let's say there's another vacancy, okay? You have no need at all to cooperate with Democrats, no need at all to find a candidate who can win bipartisan support because you just need 50 votes to cut off debate, you just need 50 votes to get confirmed, and you have 52 Republican senators. So
potentially a move that really backfired on the Democrats there. Elliot, now that Gorsuch has been confirmed, assuming he's going to start work very soon, the Supreme Court is looking at the president's executive travel suspension. How do you think his presence there may influence the ruling?
It's always such a risky proposition to guess where a judge is going to end up ideologically, let alone how they're going to rule on a particular case. We've seen so many nominees, particularly Republican nominees. I mean, no one would have guessed that Chief Justice Roberts, a Bush appointee, would cast one of the key votes in favor of the Affordable Care Act, upholding Obamacare. That being said, Neil Gorsuch does have a long paper trail. His judicial philosophy has been analyzed and likened most frequently to that of Justice Scalia. I can't see someone in the Scalia mold looking at extracurricular statements in order to decide the validity of the travel ban. That's what the district court judges did in ruling the ban unconstitutional. If you evaluate the ban solely on the text of the executive order, one is more likely to uphold it, find it constitutional, and that seems how Justice Gorsuch is going to be inclined.
And looking at some of the cases that are coming down the pike right now for the Supreme Court, is there one place that conservatives are thinking, here's where Neil Gorsuch is going to be our guy?
Sure. I mean, Judge Gorsuch has always had a rather expansive view of the rights of religious objectors to opt out of various regulations. So, for example, one of the hot issues is whether religious business owners can opt out or not be prosecuted for refusing to comply with legislation that mandates that you serve, for example, gay couples if you have a bakery or a florist shop.
And the Hobby Lobby case.
Exactly, the Hobby Lobby case. And conservatives think that he's going to rule on the side of religious objectors.
And Democrats, initially, a lot of them supported him. They didn't have any objections when he was brought forward to the Court of Appeals in 2006.
Right.
So do you think their worries are justified, or do you think he's going to turn out to be pretty balanced?
Look, I think he's going to be in the mold of Justice Scalia based on his writing up to now. So that'll restore the court to a kind of 4-4-1 balance, where the one is Justice Kennedy to decide the vote, to cast the deciding fifth vote in many key cases.
And if you look at a justice in the mold of Scalia, you're looking at one of the strictest constitutionalists that have been on the court, certainly in all of our lives. How do other justices respond to that?
So that's an interesting question, because while the philosophy is comparable to that of Justice Scalia, the tone is quite different. Scalia was liked, but he was considered somewhat acerbic in his opinions. Gorsuch, much more personality-wise, seems like a consensus builder. So one of the things that his opponents are concerned about is maybe he's going to be more persuasive with his colleagues because he is more of a consensus builder.
Well, he is very charismatic, and he does have great hair. I just have to say that. All right, Elliot Felig, thank you so much, as always, for joining us. Well, still ahead, Hamas is backing a new television show About the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we'll have more on that story next.